Part 2. Sorry guys, just cut off. Chapter 1. After Prince Andre's engagement to Natasha dawned on Pierre suddenly, and for no obvious reason, that he couldn't possibly go on living as before. For all the scrunched belief in the truth revealed to him by the benefactor, the old Freemason, and the pleasure he had taken after Prince Andre's engagement to Natasha and the death of O's badassery news reached out at exactly the same time. All the zest suddenly went out of that earlier way of living. He was left with nothing but a skeleton of life. His house was his entry to all the levels of Petersburg society, in the service at court with all its formalities. Now get through. Part 2 of Part 3 of Read. All Moscow society, from the old ladies to the children, welcomed Pierre back like a long-awaited guest, who those places had always lain ready for him, never occupied by anyone else. In the eyes of Moscow society, Pierre was the nicest and kindest of the men, and the brightest and hardest Russian gentleman of the old school. His purse was forever empty, being open to all. Benefits, performance, awful paintings and statues, charities, Gatsby, churches, book publishing, everyone and everything meant was his support, and had it not been for the two of his friends who had been bored heavily from Pierre and set themselves up as his guardians, he would have been away the last cockpit. Not a single party or the dinner took place at the club without him being there. Once seen sprawling in his usual place in the sofa after a couple of bottles of Magarax, he would be surrounded by a circle of friends and throw out a friendly smile or a well-chosen bon mot from his enough to being priest. Masonic dinners were dull to the tragedy when he wasn't there. When he got to his feet after a bachelor supper and yielded with a sweet smile to the entreaties of the relevanters to drive off with them somewhere to yell, the men would raise the roof when yells of delight in the trumpet. In the balloon, he would dance if a partner was needed, appeal to both young girls and the younger married ladies, but he didn't flirt with he was nice to everyone in just the same way, especially after supper. He is a delightful man with no sex, he used to say over the French. But instead of all that, he now was there with a wealthy husband and a white Italian gentleman in waiting of his food and drink to not averse but unbuttoning his waistcoat after dinner. In doodling in a little mild criticism of the government, a member of the Moscow English Club and everyone's favorite on the Moscow circuit. It was him long retired and to become a wrong cloud to the idea he was had the very of a model retired Moscow gentleman in raiding a type he had found so profusely relevant 7 years ago. Sometimes consoled himself with the idea that it didn't matter. Sometimes he consoled himself with the idea that it didn't matter. This was the only passing phrase, only to be struck by the horrifying thought of the plenty of others that gone through the same passing phrase, unmarking on his kind life and joining this club with all their teeth and hair and leaving when they were toothless and bald. There were moments of pride when he took stock and it seemed to him that it wasn't like him, though. He was somehow different in the retired gentleman in waiting. He was still deprived. They were vulgar and stupid men, given to the complexity, whereas I'm never still filled. I want to do things for humanity. He has put it when pride came upon him. Yes. But what if all the men, the comrades of mine, come to upon him? Yes, but what if all of them comrades are mine, also struggled like me?
Yes, he's great. He did a good work. So I think we can go through this way, but you have shoe covers? Okay, great. I'm gonna leave that here.
Replenish my shoe covers. Maybe I use them all.
If not, do you want to use slippers?
I used them all. I didn't even get to replenish yet.
Oh,
You only
or
get
just
so
take
many.
socks. Yeah.
That's good.
Okay.
Socks.
Yeah. Okay. Well, maybe we'll go out this way too. You want to just leave them here?
Oh, okay.
And then it'll be easier to put them back on, and then
Yeah.
we'll.
Whatever. I can carry it.
Well, okay. Well, I think that's okay. You can work around them. That way you don't have to carry them.
Yeah.
And the floors are pretty clean, so
Yeah.
hopefully you don't mind walking around in your socks.
I know. Worries.
Okay, hi Mom. Hi Mom. Hi Mom.
They don't even. Finally, they're out of the way. I don't care if they got hurt feelings. I don't care about it. Clown the Emperor Francis wanted to offer him his daughter for an illegal marriage. The Spaniards go down for their knees and thank God for their Catholic glory for the victory over the French on the 14th of June. And French through the same Catholic clergy to go down to their knees and thank God for the Spaniards on the same day of 14 June. My Masonic brothers take the oath and won't come up a rumble when you go around collecting my poor. And meanwhile, thoughts like these were never far from Pierre's mind, and the whole of his universal except hypocritical shame for all his theology astonished him each time like something new. I understand this, everything I understand. I tried, and I always find that understand it
Keep reading.
as everything as I do at the bottom of my heart. But there's something since I suppose, but here I am.
Oh, for sure. Dude.
What can I do with myself? Thought he had the unfortunate capacity that many men have, especially the Russian, foreseeing and believing in the possibility of goodness and taking any serious part in it. Every aspect of human activity he saw as bounded up with evil and description. Whatever he tried to be, whatever he decided to do, he found himself repelling by an evil falsehood with every avenue of activity blocked off, and meanwhile he had to live and to do everything to do. Shoot, I need to go pee. Reading and wine. Wine was becoming more and more a mental physicality necessary. He defied the doctors who warned him that was a couplet. Wine was a danger to his health, and kept on drinking heavily. The only time he felt good was when he had medically heavily. The only time he felt good was attempted several glasses of wine into his big mouth. Only when he did felt a pleasing sensation of warmth flowing through his whole body, along with his sentimental attachment to his fellow men. And enough, he didn't have to go too deeply into it. Was only after drinking a bottle or two of wine that he could gradually accept that the horribility to be less terrifying, and then the image as he was ringing in his head to be chatted away. Listen to people as they talked or read after dinner and supper. He couldn't get away from the sight of his tangled skin in only an aspect of mother. Only under the influence of wine could he say to himself, "There's nothing to do it. I'll soon get that disentangled. Look, I've got the situation here, but what's now not the time. I'll sort it out later," except that later never came. Next morning at breakfast, the old questions reserved at horribly, insolubly as every so Pierre could drive into a book with all the speed, rambling in himself. Next morning at breakfast, the old questions faced. Sometimes Pierre remembered what he had been told about soldiers busy and thus making the danger easier to bear, and Prince Andre pictured all men racing women and praying little things. Horses, politics, sports, wine, even government services, and reaching matters, nothing matters. It's all the same. If I can only escape for another, thought Pierre, and not see it, the terrible it. Chapter 2. At the beginning of winter, old Bukansky and his daughter moved to Moscow. He had become an old object of verification in Moscow because of his past achievements and his intellect. Of the popularity and Tsar Alexander regard, which condescended with a surge of anti-fresh sentiment. The Russian now made him the natural center of the operation to the government. The prince had aged a good deal that year. He had begun to show clear signs of sensibility. Very recent events, while clearly remembering in the sense from long ago, and a childlike vanity with which he assumed leadership of the Moscow opinion. Nevertheless, when the old men came down for the tea, especially of an evening, wearing his powdered wig and a thick coat, and responded to someone else by launching forth and into serious, sharp comments on the old days, or even sharper on and the more rhetoric citizens of the present day, and still evoked the same old feelings of respect and admiration in all the guests. For any visitors, furniture and powdered footmen, and the stern of the shredded old man himself, a relic from the past, along with his gentle daughter and once was our visitor. That the clear signs of sentinel nodding off with any warning, forgetting very recent events while clearly remembering innocence from long ago. Very recent events while clearly remembering innocence from long ago. And the childlike vanity of which with which he assumed leadership of the Moscow opinion. Nevertheless, in the old man came down for tea, especially from Moscow opinions. Nevertheless, the old man came down for tea, especially of an evening, wearing his powder wig and a thick little coat, and responded to someone's challenge by launching forth into a series of sharp comments on the old days, or even sharper and more vilatronic cynicism and of the present day, who still evoked the same old feelings of respect and admiration in all the guests. For any visitors, that old-fashioned house with all its enormous buyers, pre-revolution furnitures and powdered footmen, with stern and shredded old man, with the relic of from the past, along with his gentle daughter and pretty French Vulcan, one whom he doted on him, presented by a magnificent and the most appealing spectacle. But those same visitors never stopped to think that in addition to couple hours when during that hidden private life of household continued. That private life in Moscow had recently come very hard for Princess Maria. In the town she was deprived of his greatest pleasures, conversations with pilgrims, and solid attitude, both of which she had found so refreshing at Bald Hills, and none other of the advent of the delight in metropolitan life to her. She never went out into society, and everyone knew what her father wouldn't allow her to go anywhere in society. Everyone knew that her father wouldn't let her go anywhere. People had stopped inviting her to dinner parties or balls. Princess Maria had now abandoned all hope of marriage. She had noticed the frostiness of animosity with which the old prince received as he dismissed any young men, possible suitors, who parted in Moscow. She had lost faith into two friends who had been closest in Moscow. She had lost faith into two friends who had been close to her. She had become disenchanted with Madame Bourrienne, in whom she would never complete confidence, and now she kept over the 5 long years with her in Moscow. But when they met face to face, the struck by Princess Maria, an utterly alien, on the death of her brother Julie, had become one of the wealthiest in Moscow, and was now making the most of the heaviest pleasures offered by a high expectative of her virtues. Julie had reached a stage where a young society lady, no longer in the first flush of the youth, began to sense that her last chance of getting married has come, and her first must soon be decided once for all. Every Tuesday, Princess Maria her languorous smile. She had complicated the prospect of having no one to write to Julie, because Julie could regain with her on the spot and seeing her once a week. Not that there was any pleasures to be delivered from the meetings. Chapter 2, Volume 11, page 595.